positive thinker. I always believe anything can happen.
Good evening, everybody. If you could take a seat, we could begin. Actually, I'm going to ask you to stand so we can say the pledge. Got a flag behind me. Please stand for the pledge. Thank you. And thank you for coming. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So without further ado, I'm going to have Mr. Shri Thanedar coming up. He's speaking. He's running for governor. So please give him a warm welcome.
How is everybody? All right, we'll keep this informal. So if you have any questions on your mind, I will take it. And there's a little bit of information I want to tell you because we haven't met before. Many of us, we haven't met before. So I want to talk a little bit about who I am. So almost 36 years ago, I first came to Michigan. That was August of 1982. I had just finished my PhD in chemistry. And I had applied to about 150 jobs, and I had gotten 150 rejections. And finally, I found a professor at the University of Michigan who offered me a postdoctoral job, like a scientist job, at the university. So the only question was, the car an Impala had bought for $200. Will it make from Acker, Ohio to Ann Arbor, Michigan? I was very excited. I put all of my worldly assets in the trunk of the car, and I still have so much room left in the trunk. And the car made it. I was a little worried because I bought the car for $200 and the insurance itself was up at $200 as well. And so I chose not to buy insurance. So drove that car for about a year without insurance. Because, you know, as a graduate student, they'll pay me $300 a month. And then I'll take $75 out of that and send it home so my family can put food on the table. And in 3 months in the summer, there is no teaching, there's no lab. So they wouldn't pay me. And so I couldn't afford to keep my apartment. And those were the days I would sleep either in my car or I would sleep in a public building. And so I was very excited to get my first job after having immigrated to the United States 3 years ago, 1979. And so fortunately the car made it to Ann Arbor, even though I got a ticket that day that wiped out half of my net worth.
Wow.
1984, I got a green card, so I got my path to United States citizenship, which I was so excited to obtain in 1988. So that's my introduction to Michigan. Michigan gave me my first job. Michigan gave me a chance to become a citizen of this great country of ours. And so I feel tremendous obligation to our great state. And today I'm particularly proud of our state, and today I was able to go to the Board of Elections and submit 30,000 signatures to get on the ballot to be the next governor of our great state. And it was a very, very proud moment and very exciting moment. And I'm just excited all day today. I'm just really very happy about it. So I'm a scientist, and I understand things like climate change. And I think it's good for our leaders to understand climate change. and why renewable energy is important, and why we must keep our Great Lakes clean and pure. And as a scientist governor, I would make sure the ticking time bomb, Enbridge Line 5, I would shut that down immediately as your governor. I'll also make sure as a scientist governor that the disaster of Flint, Michigan never happens again in Michigan. I am a progressive Democrat, and I want to work on a number of things. My priorities are education. Education helped me pull myself and my family out of poverty. And I want to make education affordable and accessible. I believe education and health care are not privileges. Those are our fundamental rights. And I want to make sure that we make education affordable, and regardless of a person's financial strength, everyone should be able to get good quality education. I would invest in our K-12. I will work on having a universal pre-K, and I will respect the teachers. I'll pay the teachers like the professionals they are. And we need to, I've seen teachers taking money out of their own pocket and try to buy supplies for their classroom. And that's no way to run our education. And we need to bring our education from the 35th in the nation all the way in the top 10. And I want to do that, and I want to be known as the education governor Michigan never had. I will work on infrastructure. We need to fix those damn roads. Those potholes are dangerous. They're, and we are become a joke. Michigan has become a joke in the nation of how bad our roads are. And one party who has controlled all branches of government in Lansing has not invested in our state. And I want to invest in our infrastructure, and I want to, work on and take care of our roads. And I want to work on a single-payer health care for Michigan. That's one of my goals. So I'll be working and bringing progressive agenda to the state of Michigan. And because we can't afford to have another 4 years of a Republican governor. You guys agree?
Yes.
We can't have a Republican governor, and certainly we cannot have Bill Shri as our next governor, right? So here is what I have for you. So this is my rally sign. This is my logo, my name, Shri. And then at the back of it, I have this. So we have plenty of these signs. If you can't see that far back, can anybody tell this is number 45? And that's Mr. Bill Shri. So I want to get rid of no BS in our state, right? So I want you to help me. I want you to help me send Mr. Bill Shri, and I'll call him Mr. BS for short. Send him back to Midland, Michigan. All right. Only place I say that when I get booed is in Midland, Michigan. They want it back. All right. So so we need to put a strong candidate in the November election if we had to win the governorship. That means, Mr. Shri, we need to have someone that's different and that's contrast with Mr. Shri, not someone that is just like him, right? So Mr. Shri came from privilege. He had the Dow Chemical inheritance. I lived in poverty And I struggled, struggled in my life. So I understand how 22% of Michiganders live under poverty. Mr. Shri is beholden to big corporations. I mean, he has mastered the pay-for-play culture in Lansing. A lot of corporate money, a lot of lobbyists who have corrupted our government and our politicians, right? And I have taken a pledge not to accept a single penny from corporate special interests. Now, I'm a small business owner. I am a entrepreneur. I've run many small businesses. Now, Mr. BS always worries about his job. He's been on government payroll for the last 35 years. I heard that he started running for governor when he was in 3rd grade. But I have created hundreds of jobs here in America, not a single job outsourced, as I ran many small businesses. My last business was in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I created 50 good-paying jobs in the last 6 years. And in 2016, I decided to sell that business so that I can devote the rest of my life to public service.
Amen.
Because I felt that Michigan has given me so much, and I owe it to the United States, I owe it to Michigan to give back. I have achieved my American dream, but I see the American dream is fading all across America. And it's fading more so in Michigan than any other place. And I want to represent the people. I want to give people a helping hand to make them achieve their American dream right here in Michigan. So that's my goal, and that's the reason why I'm running to be the next governor. So I would like you to support us. I would like to earn your support. You can know more about me and my policies on my website, Shri2018.com. I also have a book. It's called Blue Suitcase, and I think we have plenty of copies. This is a complimentary copy, so you could see how I have lived my life. You could see how decisions I made. This is not a political book. I wrote this book in 2008. But it tells my story and my ups and downs and struggles and successes and failures. I wrote it in a very transparent way. And you're welcome to pick up a complimentary copy if you, I'm already seeing some people worried to take something complimentary, so I have a solution. You can always go to my website. There's a big red button that says donate. And donate a couple bucks if you want, and if you can. And if you cannot donate, then there's also another button that says volunteer. I'm looking for lots of volunteers. We're running a statewide campaign. I am not the establishment candidate. I'm running against an establishment candidate. And so this is a people's movement. I'm getting a lot of support from a lot of people. And I want your support as well. So help me as much as you can, in whatever way you can. And I ask for your support. And with your support, I want to make Michigan a progressive state. I want to make Michigan an inclusive state. I want to make our economy work for all of us, not just the top 1%. So thank you so much.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Thanedar?
Yes.
Hi, I have one. You mentioned that you're not taking any funding from corporate interests,
Yes.
and I was wondering if any funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry for your campaign, and also I'm wondering what your position is on
I get zero contribution from pharmaceutical companies. I get zero contribution from any corporations. I put my own money. I am not Donald Trump rich, and I'm not Rick Snyder rich. But I'm putting a big chunk of my savings and what I've earned, my nest egg, big chunk of it, into this campaign so that I won't be beholden to corporations. And but I will take small donations from any of you. So don't let that stop you from donating to our campaign. And I'm a scientist. I think like a scientist, and I believe data is important and science is important. I know there is disagreement about vaccines. That's what you're talking about, right? And parents' right to either vaccinate or not vaccinate their children.
According to their
Religious beliefs. And you know, as a scientist, I feel this is a good thing to do, is saves lives. But at the same time, from personal freedom and religious freedom point of view, if you feel that that's what you want to do, I would not make that a mandatory thing. So I would respect a parent's right to choose. What business am I in?
Yes, you said you want to have a business.
Yeah, I have sold the business now, but I am a scientist. I solve problems for manufacturing companies. I help little companies develop medicine that the big companies like Pfizer will not develop because there was no blockbuster profits in them. So I'm an innovator. I did not manufacture anything. I was a service company, and I was a research and development service company. I did innovations. I helped manufacturers solve their problems. For example, there was a small town where a woman who was working in her garden was getting skin irritation working in the soil. And there is the only employer in that town was a chemical company, and they had this huge big stacks, and ash would fly out of those stacks. And the townspeople believed that that ash was causing that skin irritation, but the company would not listen to them. So what I did was I took the soil, took it to my lab, I analyzed it, found chemicals, including cancer-causing chemicals. And then I took the fly ash from this company and found the very same chemicals in that. And when I wrote a report, they were able to use my report to take action against that corporation. So I did that kind of work, a lot of chemical analysis, a lot of testing water for lead, testing soil for chemicals. I also innovated a lot of new products for entrepreneurs who want to start their own businesses. Yes?
A couple of weeks ago, the Nestle was given permission to pump 400 gallons of water out of our Great Lakes per minute. It was 250 gallons before that. What can you do to stop that?
Well, you know, 80,000 Michiganders said that should be stopped.
Correct.
And our governor and our government did not listen to our people. I will stop Nestle from taking our water.
How can you stop that?
We can. And, you know, this is our water.
I'm just asking what would be your plan? I know it's our water.
Yes.
But what would be your plan?
I want to see.
Nestle is huge.
Absolutely. But Michigan and our government, we are a 10 million people strong state. And I want to go look into the contracts, and I want to see under what authority they're taking our water. But my belief is that we are stewards of our Great Lakes, and we must protect our water. And I would not want Michigan water to go outside of Michigan. And I will stop Nestle, and I'll find a way. I will study their contract and any agreement they have with the state, and I will reverse it. But we must stop Nestle from taking our water.
Shri,
Yes.
I've got about a three-part question here.
Yes.
First of all, what's your spiritual background?
My parents raised me as a Hindu.
Okay. And I also want to ask about the mass transportation that needs to come to Michigan. Maybe our roads could be saved if we got the weight limit on the trucks and had some kind of alternative transportation.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So we need to have mass transit. We need to expand the bus services, more bus routes. I would like to see bus services from Detroit to Ann Arbor and Detroit to Traverse City. I would, I see people that are traveling and taking 2-3 buses to get to their work. And after taking 2 buses, they still have to walk 1.5 miles to get to work. And that's no way to live. And we need to not allow cities to opt out. And we should be able to have mass transit to make it easy for people to move around and hold on to good paying jobs.
And the weight limit?
Well, again, the corporation should pay for fixing our roads.
Right.
I am not going to put another penny of tax burden on the middle class or the lower class or the working poor.
Okay.
The auto registration already put so much burden and made owning automobile more expensive. And that's not the way to do. These big trucks that corporations have on our highways is tearing up our highways. And we want to use the mileage to charge them to pay for the roads. So I will be all for doing that. Yes?
Another thing that I'd like to add, and I think it's important to everybody here, with any candidate, you want somebody that you feel is going to be honest and truthful with you. A few weeks ago, maybe it was about a month now, on your Facebook page, you posted a statement and a bullet point that specifically stated stronger immunization requirements for all children who attend public school to prevent resurgence of diseases, no more philosophical or religious exemptions. That was your goal.
I heard from a lot of moms and I heard from a lot of parents, and then I agreed that they need to have the freedom.
So you changed your mind on taking away the right for the freedom to choose. I just want to be clear that you're not going to change your mind later once you're in office.
I will listen to people. And I will listen to people. I still believe from a scientific point of view, vaccination is the right thing to do and saves lives. But I will give that freedom to parents.
Okay. So with that, and with your scientific background, being a chemist, and doing the research on what was in the air, coming from Pfizer, and your concerns about the carcinogens, are you fully aware of the excipient lists that are for vaccines and the carcinogens that are in immunizations? Because if you're not, I'm going to leave you a complete excipient list along with a list of the aborted fetal cells that are inside them, just to make sure that you don't change your mind and you continue to support your decision to allow people to choose what goes into their body.
I'll be happy to read that, study that. As a scientist, I believe in data, I believe in research, and I will certainly be happy to. So thank you for providing that information to me.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Yes?
I'd like to add that vaccination is social responsibility, because if you let your children get measles, you're going to pass it on to somebody else. And I think all that stuff that you see on the internet about causing cancer or autism or stuff, I think that's not true. I'm not a scientist. But I think it's immunization has done us well so far.
Yeah. And as a parent, I, gave vaccine to my children.
I don't know, because you're a scientist and you know that's what the world is in class. But I stick by your beliefs, and that's it, because they're always going to be crazy.
Can you repeat what he's saying? Because it's hard to hear back here. I'm sorry.
Well, I think, what are you saying?
We said something. I'm sorry.
he just has an opposing viewpoint as you do. But I think two of you should get together and have a lovely discussion, a lively discussion. I recommend.
I think we'll take one more question, then we have 4 more speakers yet. I'm sorry, we have one more question, then we have 4 more speakers, so please.
Yes.
Go ahead, Rose.
How old are your children and when did they get vaccinated?
Yeah.
In the past, the vaccinations were individual, now they're putting together, and that's something.
My children got vaccinated, I think when they were very young age.
How old are they now?
I have 2 boys. I'm very proud of them. So let me tell you a little bit about my boys. When my sons were 4 and 8 years old, their mother passed away. And I raised these 2 boys as a single father until I met a wonderful woman and got remarried several years later. And I'm very proud of these boys. They grew up, they graduated from University of Michigan Ross Business School, and now they are entrepreneurs creating jobs in America. So I'm very, very proud of my boys. Now they are 29 and 25 years old.
All right, see you next time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thanedar. Okay, we have our second speaker, and that is going to be Mr. Bill Cobbs, running for governor. Please give him a warm welcome.
Well, thank you, folks. Let me start off by telling you I am not a scientist. I think what I'm going to do is share a couple of minutes about my background with you, and then we'll get into exactly what needs to happen here in Michigan. So, I'm running for governor because, like you, I know we can be doing a lot better in this state. I'm running for governor because I believe that we need to be affording every child in this state an opportunity for a good life, no matter what zip code they were born and raised in. Now, I'm a native son of Michigan, so I know what we can accomplish when we work together. I graduated from Cass Technical High School back in 1970, and I enrolled in the University of Michigan. When I enrolled in the University of Michigan, my folks and I had enough money to pay for the first year. When that year was over, I enlisted in the United States Navy. And I'm proud to stand here today and tell you that I served in the Navy with distinction. And because of that, I was recommended by my commanding officer for the Navy Boost program. Boost stands for Broadened Opportunities for Officers Selection and Training. To get into that program, you had to be recommended by a superior officer, and you had to be approved by the Chief of Naval Operations. The Boost program allowed me to make a decision about going back to the University of Michigan and completing my undergraduate education, or going to the United States Naval Academy. I like girls, so I went back to U of M. When I completed my undergraduate education at U of M, I went back on active duty. So I got to see naval service both as an enlisted guy and later as an officer. When I completed my naval service, I got admitted to Wayne State University Law School. I came home and I needed a job to help pay for that. So for 4 years while I was in law school, I was also a Detroit cop. And many times while I was a police officer, serving and protecting my community, I was first on the scene way too often where needless gun violence had resulted in a life being taken. When I finished law school, I went to work for Xerox, started at the very bottom. And over the course of my Xerox career, I eventually became the Global Vice President for Public Sector, with responsibility for the US, Canada, Latin America, and Europe. In 1994, I started a new division in Xerox, the Xerox Professional Services Group. I started that group with 19 people. And over the course of 8 years, we created 2,500 well-paying jobs around the world. And we made that into a $1 billion division. Today, as many of you may know, Xerox is two separate companies. You got the old product company, and you have a services company. That services company is called Conduit. That company is a $10 billion operation, and that's that company I started in 1994. So I know how to get things done. When I was at the University of Michigan, I was lucky because I met my wife there. And we've been a team for the last 38 years. I've got 2 adult children, Will and Brooke, and I've got a very precocious 4-year-old granddaughter who thinks she's 30. Now, I'm running for governor because it's time that we get the state back on the right track and moving in the right direction. And I'm going to ask a question now. How many of you, by any chance, saw last Sunday's Detroit Free Press? Did you see the story? Anybody see the story on me? So there was a story in the Free Press. And this Free Press story was good because it tells you something about me. What it tells you is that adversity for me is something you go around, you go through, or you go over. You don't let it defeat you. The story talks about my own personal adventure for staying alive. I get to stand in front of you today because in 2011, I underwent a heart transplant. So I'm a heart transplant recipient. And you would never know it if I didn't tell you. But the reason I tell that story is because the donation that made my life possible, this young man's family did something truly, truly unique. His mother donated 17 organs from her son's body to keep other folks alive. So today, she is very much a part of my life, very, very much a part of my family. And I like to think that the reason I'm standing here today is what Ronnie didn't get to finish in his life, I've been given the opportunity to do it in my life. So when we talk about the next governor of the state, it's got to be somebody who's fundamentally willing to do something different. You know, the first line of the Michigan Constitution says that all political power is inherent in the people, that government is for their equal security, benefit, and protection. We're not living that today, and we're seeing the consequences of that. I want to do something unique. I want to make sure that we abide by that as we move this state forward. I want to make sure that we're creating opportunity that embraces every single citizen. You know, the thing that I tell people that is most important for the next governor of the state to do is to work on alleviating poverty. We live in one of the most beautiful states in this country, yet almost 40% of the people in this state live at or below the poverty level, and we can fix that. So when I talk to you about what I want to do regarding education, what I want to do regarding infrastructure, what I believe is critical for us in terms of water and infrastructure policy, when I talk about tax reform, those are all things that support moving us forward in getting Michigan citizens out of poverty. Now, I think before going into detail, I want to make sure that I'm hearing what you care about. So let's open the floor up now to your questions so you have an opportunity to ask me what's on your mind. Because I think the next governor of the state has got to be somebody who not only tells you what they're going to do, but they tell you why, they tell you how they're going to get it done, and they tell you when. We're tired of promises. It's got to be something that's actionable. So who's got the first question?
Unions. The right to work was put in effect. How are you going to make unions stronger?
So one of the things that I'm going to do from the day I get into office is try and repeal right to work. See, I'm the only, one of the things I neglected to tell you about me is that I have actually been a member of a labor union. I know what collective bargaining is all about. You know, when I finished high school, the summer I finished high school, my dad made me go work in the plant, so I know what real work was. So I was a member of the UAW. When I was a police officer, I was a member of the Detroit Police Officers Association and the Police Officers Association of Michigan and the Fraternal Order of Police. So I have a long legacy of being involved in organized labor. And the one thing that I fundamentally understand that clearly some people in Lansing don't get is if you look at the history of the state, the thing that has consistently been the backbone for improving the economic conditions of our people and growing our economy is organized labor. So I'm going to support that and make sure that we stop putting these attacks on the thing that drives Michigan's future. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
I spent a good chunk of the day in downtown Detroit, and I am absolutely thrilled that it's coming back. I grew up in Detroit, I love Detroit, and I think that there should be more cooperation between the governor and the mayors, not just of Detroit, but all the cities that are dying.
And I agree with you, except here's something I'm going to tell you. I love what's happening in downtown Detroit. I love what's happening in Midtown. But, here's the but, you can't have a city if you aren't investing in neighborhoods as well. So I said that when I become the next governor of this state, one of the conversations I'm going to have with Mike Duggan is maybe it's time to rethink what's happening with the land bank. There are 72,000 houses that have been identified in the city of Detroit for destruction, to be torn down, at an average cost of $25,000 a house. Now, wouldn't it be unique if we took some of those houses and said, we're going to let citizens buy them for $1, and instead of spending $25,000 to tear them down, we're going to give them a $25,000 grant to start the rehabilitation process. That's how you revive a city. You know, one of the reasons I'm focusing on public pre-K through 12 education in the state of Michigan is I understand that you cannot have a robust neighborhood where you don't have local schools. Schools are always the anchor for a community. When you take those schools out of the community, you inhibit their ability to draw new people into them. You know, in 1965, Detroit had 300 public schools, and it was a totally different looking city than it is today. In 1998, there were still 199 schools in Detroit, and it was a totally different looking city than it was in 1965. When you look at Detroit today, you have a city that has less than 80 schools, and you have communities that look like they belong in a third world country because citizens aren't there anymore. When we take schools out of neighborhoods, we begin the road to blight, and we can change that. Next question. Yes, sir.
Scott, kind of an agricultural question. Michigan is second only to California, quality diversity of crops grown. Nobody talks about it. Our current governor doesn't speak on the issue, and if you're talking about taking people out of poverty, put farmers to work growing crops for people that we have great assets. Would you in turn take and make a place like all public universities buy all their food and produce from Michigan farms? Michigan State University, where I graduated from, is a city of 35,000 people. That would do a lot. That one school alone would do a lot to help Michigan farmers and Michigan agriculture and the businesses associated with that. Public spending on public institutions. 3 hospitals downtown spend $1 billion a year. If they spend it locally in Detroit from sourcing toilet paper, soap, food, this and that, that would do a great deal for the economy. That's
a great idea. We will encourage them to make those changes. You know, we clearly have a very vibrant agricultural community. Anybody in this room aware of the fact that we're the blueberry capital of the world?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we are. We are the blueberry capital of the world, and we're not exploiting that. So I hear you. I get the message loud and clear. We have to do more to make sure that we are doing the right things to grow every opportunity we have in the state, to grow our agricultural footprint, to create opportunities for new businesses to want to come here and do business. Yes, sir.
The various municipalities in southeast Michigan especially cooperate, like have a metropolitan form of government like Toronto has. That's why they have a beautiful transportation system.
You are speaking my language. You know, it's crazy to me that we have cities like Detroit that have other cities inside of the boundaries of their city. You've got, in Detroit, you got Hamtramck, and you got Highland Park, and you've got 3 different municipalities to support economically, and none of them are doing well. We got to get smarter and really come up with legislation that allows us to incorporate our municipalities in a way that makes sense, that we get away from these political decisions that don't drive good economy of scale. That's what we got to be about. So I'm on the same page as you.
But that's really a major reason why we don't have a tri-county transportation system.
And one of the things that we can do at the state level to help to begin to fix that is I vowed that as the next governor of the state, we're going to return revenue sharing to local municipalities. Is we've got to get serious about our infrastructure issues. And when I talk about infrastructure, I'm not just talking about roads, I'm talking about water and sewage, dams and those things, because all of those things are infrastructure issues. What did I do? And you know, to do infrastructure right in Michigan, we got to fundamentally do something radical. My plan for infrastructure is that we will invest $60 billion over the next 30 years in getting our infrastructure model correct. Because see, one thing that I understand, everybody who cares is outraged about what happened in Flint. Flint was just a canary in a coal mine, folks. What happened in the city of Flint can happen in any city in this state if we don't begin to take immediate action to replace those infrastructure models that are 60, 70, 80 years old. And we can't continue the process of putting Band-Aids on problems and passing them down the road for somebody else to do. Now, $60 billion sounds like a lot of money for infrastructure, and it is. It is. But if we don't do it, the bill only is going to get bigger. So we got to make the move now.
Where's the money gonna come from?
I'm going to tell you. So, to make it happen, I want to float a 30-year municipal bond. And the way we're going to service that bond is we're going to revamp Michigan's tax structure, which means we're going to have a constitutional convention. You know, it doesn't make sense that in Michigan that everybody, whether you make $20,000 a year, whether you make $1 million, is paying the same 4.25% tax rate. We got to fix that. You know, I want to make sure that we are asking people who make more to pay their fair share. The tax structure that I'm proposing would have a top rate on it of 10%. In order for somebody to pay 10%, so don't panic, in order for me to say to you that you need to be paying 10%, you'd have to have a household income greater than $600,000. And anybody who wants to come and cry that 10% of $600,000 is too much, then move. We don't need you. Because we have real work that we got to get done. And we're never going to get it done if the message is always, well, let's cut taxes. We cut taxes last year, didn't we? Anybody see a real difference in their pocket? Wasn't that silly? It was very, you know, it made some folks in Lansing feel like, you know, they were keeping a promise, but it didn't effectively solve any of our problems. And I've had an opportunity to live in a country that has one of the highest nominal tax rates in the world. That's Denmark. You ever heard the story that they say all the Danes are the happiest people in the world? They are. They are. But you know why? They pay a really high tax rate but they get something back for those taxes. You know, in Denmark, when a kid finishes finishes high school, they go to college for free. And while they're in college, they get a $2,000 a month stipend while they're in college. You know, medical care is free. You can't have a single-payer model. But to have a single-payer model or universal health care, we gotta first condition our folks to recognizing that it's still gotta be paid for. And we can't do that overnight. So I'm not gonna come here in front of you and say that I'm gonna promise you universal health care or single payer as the next governor of the state. I'm not. What I'm gonna promise you is that we're not gonna allow one single Michigan citizen to fall through the cracks because they can't afford medical coverage. What I'm gonna tell you is that I'm going to work day and night to make sure that those crazy folks in Washington don't do anything to further erode the ACA. You know, we have got to recognize that government can only do as much as you make happen. I'm your voice, but you gotta be behind me. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I work in the medical field.
Mhm.
Okay, I deal with insurance, these people that have this ACA insurance. And I can't tell you how many times a week that they cry on the other end of the phone because they can barely afford the premium, and now they can't afford to come to the doctors. So how is the ACA helping them?
Well,
Everybody has insurance. I mean, yeah, if you know, depending on, you know, how much money you make or whatever you can get, you know, credits on your insurance.
so,
What am I supposed to tell my people that are coming that have children that need physical therapy that they can't get it because they have $10,000 deductible?
so I didn't say it was perfect.
Right.
I didn't say it was perfect. And one of the things that I want to look for the ability to do as the next governor of the state is to expand Healthy Michigan. That's how we don't let citizens fall through the cracks. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry?
They don't qualify for it because they have a job.
They don't qualify for it today.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that we can't fix that.
Okay.
That's a whole part of government. Government has got to be willing to listen to our citizens and respond, not ignore. I'm going to listen and I'm going to respond. So everything that you tell me, I'm hearing. And I'm looking for ways to improve the situation. Now, let's talk about ACA for a second. Not perfect, no question about it. But I can tell you that has somebody who benefited from ACA by virtue of the fact that lifetime caps went away, it improved a lot of things. Is there more room for improvement? Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason I'm not going to stand here and say we're going to make universal health care or single payer happen is one simple thing. I understand the cost. For us to do single payer or universal health care in Michigan, we would have to raise, at a minimum, $25 to $30 billion in additional revenue. If you can tell me where it's coming from, I'll make it happen the first day I take office. We got to figure out how we make it financially work. I'm more than willing. I'm a supporter, but I know that we got to have a way to pay for it. Next question.
Line 5.
Line 5.
Yes.
So anybody who follows water policy and environmental policy in the state will tell you there has only been one gubernatorial candidate who has consistently showed up for every Line 5 and every Nestle public hearing that has occurred in the state. Last April, when MDEQ held a public hearing in Big Rapids, over 800 people from across the state showed up for that meeting. And it was an insult the way MDEQ did that hearing, because it was supposed to be a 4-hour hearing. 2 hours were supposed to be public information, and then there were supposed to be 2 hours of public comment. Let me tell you what the 2 hours of public information consisted of. It was 2 hours of a 5-minute video that played in a consistent loop. It was designed to discourage citizens from staying so that they wouldn't make public comments. But to their credit, almost 600 people stayed. And from 7 o'clock to past midnight, citizens delivered public comments. That's why it took Nestle so long to get approval for that expansion. And what I say to citizens every chance I get to speak is we have to consistently keep making noise, because MDEQ waited until we stopped making noise to approve that permit. As long as we keep yelling and screaming and saying no, they won't do it. Last summer, if you don't believe me, pull it up for yourself. Last summer, Nestle ran full-page ads in every single Sunday paper trying to lobby to get that increase approved, and it didn't happen. But as soon as citizens stopped paying attention, it went through. I've said as the next governor of this state, there are going to be 2 people who I fire immediately. One is the current director of MDEQ. Gotta go. Because if you're not an environmentalist and you're supporting environmental policy, you can't be the head of MDEQ. The second person is the head of Michigan State Police. You gotta lead by example. And if you aren't willing to address real issues in your department, then it's time for you to take a long, permanent vacation. Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you the same question that we presented to Shri. I need to know what your position is on allowing parents and people to choose the right to decide what goes in their pocket.
So I'm not a scientist. So I'm going to give you a very visceral answer. I think that we should not interfere with parental rights. But I'm going to give you a caveat. And the caveat is that we have a public school system. And we've got to balance family and parental rights with public health concerns and exposing other children to communicable diseases. So, do I know the answer today? I don't. I need to do some more homework and understand the long-term implications if we say, this is the policy and this is what we're going to do.
Long-term implications of forced immunization.
Well, the long-term implications of both sides, of doing it and not doing it.
And so you're admitting that you need to educate yourself.
That-
So we would like to give you information and then to give you the excipient list.
And I will happily take it.
Website to go to educate yourself.
Sure.
So you can really know the true risk and potential benefit that the CDC tends to kind of advertise,
Mhm.
but never really tells you what the package insert says about the risks of having adverse reactions.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Back to the insurance,
Mhm.
healthcare and stuff. I have a son that is vaccine injured, and I am here today. But it costs me about $500 a month to keep him alive,
Mhm.
okay? And obviously, it's probably nothing that you personally can do, but maybe you can, going after the pharmaceutical companies on making these prescriptions. One medication a month, and I pay $1,000 a month for health insurance, plus I pay $150 a month in additional insurance for a special health care to help cover some of the expenses that my Blue Cross doesn't cover. Plus I have, a $2,000 deductible, plus I have a co-insurance, and my co-insurance is $500 a month.
Yeah.
On top of what we have to pay.
So what we can do,
And I know there's elderly people that can't afford, their medications.
what we can do is remove the restrictions that prevented those companies from having tort liability, so that when they do injure someone through their drugs, that you do have the right to sue and recover damages.
How does that go to the same as vaccines? Because doctors are not liable for if they inject your child or yourself with a vaccine and you become injured or die.
That's a legislative that's a legislative feature that we can fix through legislation. Yeah.
Because I do feel that they should be vulnerable as well, knowing that they don't give you the full disclosure on these vaccines. And, you know, unfortunately, when my children were vaccinated as a child, the internet wasn't established as it is now to do your research into, you know, so I'm just curious on how to fix that to prevent more children, you know, from being injured and dying from these vaccines.
And ultimately, that's taxing our education system because there's not enough special education teachers and classrooms to meet the need for these children that are damaged from the aluminum and the immunizations that cause encephalitis and wreck the brain. And I'm not speaking just as a layman, I'm speaking as a healthcare provider that treats these people that come to me injured in my office. So I know firsthand what's happening.
So we have said that part of the restructuring of public education in Michigan, there are two things that are critical. We got to change the funding formula. We've got to have a formula that doesn't say that we're going to fund students at the minimum, that we're willing to invest the dollars in providing education and support services that kids need to deliver the kind of educational outcomes that we say are important. You know, we constantly hear folks stand up and talk about breaking the school to prison pipeline without acknowledging the fact that in Michigan, we spend 5 times as much money a year to keep folks locked up as we're willing to spend on public education. I have vowed as the next governor of the state of Michigan, we're going to change that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to provide funding that is appropriate for educating kids in the state. A report came out a couple of months ago and it said that we are underfunding public education to the tune of thousands of dollars. My proposal to fix that is that we just change funding to $11,500 per pupil minimum right now. Second thing is that we have got to be prepared to recognize that not every Michigan kid is going to go to college or wants to go to college. We've got to provide them with a pathway. So I'm also proposing that we return vocational education to every single high school. So we're giving kids an opportunity to graduate with a skill that makes them employable day one and not relying on a apprenticeship program that many people complain they can't get into or they're waiting years and years to take advantage of, or community college, because like any other college, it's not free. They still got to come up with a way to pay for it, and if they're working at Burger King or Whopper or one of those places, they don't have that kind of dispensable income. So we need to make sure that we reincorporate it into high schools. I know I'm running long, so I appreciate you. Yeah. Our webpage is BillCobbs2018.com. Thank you so much.
Next, we have Jordan Acker, who is running for University of Michigan Board of Regents. Give him a warm welcome, please.
Sorry, I'm a lawyer. I hate podiums. Hi, I'm Jordan Acker. I'm running for the U of M Board of Regents. So when you run for an office like the Board of Regents, and I've been traveling around the state now for about 6 months. This is my 68th Dem Club. Been traveling all throughout the state. You get 3 questions. There's 3 questions that people ask you. The first one is, what's a regent? The second one is, why do you want to do this? And the third one, and this is serious, I get this question all the time, is, can you get me some football tickets? I wish I was... Do we just lose them? I can't get...
You know what? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right.
I'm having a good time with that.
Oh yeah, it's one of those days.
Don't move and you're okay.
I hope I can project well enough that people can hear me. So, the first 2 questions are the most important ones for me. So first of all, what is the U of M Regent? The U of M Regents are the 8-person governing board of the University of Michigan. Currently there are 5 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and 2 of the Republicans are up this year. But for me, the why the why is the most important question. I mean, why would someone want to do this? Why would someone want to travel the state? It's not sexy like running for governor, or running for Congress. It's a job that pays literally no money. Why would someone want to do this? So for me, it comes down to 2 dates in my life, 2 days that made me want to do this. The first one was April 29th, 2006. April 29th, 2006. What happened? I graduated from the University of Michigan debt-free. Now, as I travel around the state, people applaud when I say that. But the reality is, it had nothing to do with me. Everybody remember the MET program? Everyone remember what the MET program is? It's a great, great thing to help students throughout the state go to school debt-free. It helped me. Because of that, my parents walked out of the Detroit Medical Center and bought MET credits. And so in 2006, I was able to graduate from the University of Michigan debt-free. And I think about this a lot because everything that I've been able to do in my entire life, everything is because I was able to walk out of Ann Arbor without student debt. I was able to work in the Obama administration, in the White House, and then at Homeland Security. I was able to go to law school, and by the way, not graduate debt-free from law school, and with about $110,000 worth of debt. I was able to afford to buy a house, to be able to afford childcare for my 2 little girls, 3 and 1. All of those things were only possible because I was able to walk out of Ann Arbor without student debt. So how do we do this? How do we make sure that every kid in Michigan has that same opportunity that I did? So the first and most important way comes this November when it comes to the governor's race, it comes to the legislature. We need a Democratic governor and a Democratic legislature in our state. Period. But when it comes to the university, what do? So the University of Michigan has an $11 billion endowment. It's the second wealthiest public institution in the country. I ask this everywhere I go, does anybody know what the wealthiest public university is by endowment in the country? Anybody know? I think you've heard this before. Is that possible? So the University of Texas, and the reason why they have that wealth is because of oil revenue. We don't have that in Michigan. We can't. What we have done is actually we've spent less in terms of our endowment. We've gone from 6% to 5% to 4.5%. And that money is coming directly out of financial aid. So we need to do so much better to make sure that every Michigan kid has that same opportunity. And the second thing that we can do is we need to make sure that every kid has the opportunity to graduate on time, has the resources they need to graduate, and more importantly, has the ability to transfer credits from community college, from another university. All of those things are crucial in order to make sure that people can graduate with a 4-year degree because it is so important. And I want to talk quickly about the second date in my life. It was I'll never forget this, April 23rd of 2016. April 23rd, 2016. What happened on that day? God. Every time it's actually, even now I've been doing this for about 7 months, it's still hard to talk about. Like most guys in their early 30s who think that their bodies are still 19, I went out and played a couple hours to pick up basketball. I came home and my back was hurting. Stop me if you've heard this one before. I came home, my back was hurting. My wife said to me, Jordan, go see the doctor. I'm sure you just have some back spasms. You'll be okay. So I did. I went and saw the doctor, and the doctor prescribed Flexerol for me. I took one Flexerol, and my liver shut down. Wow. I lost 40 pounds. I was that strange orange color that our president is. Trust me. That is not a healthy color. You don't want to be there.
That's the right thing.
It's not natural. But the scariest part was nobody, I guess the whole team decided to walk out. Now I can tell my views on vaccination.
It might come back.
I know. I'm having faith there, aren't I? But anyway.
We're still listening.
I appreciate it. Look. I'm the grandson of a polio survivor, so when I hear stuff like that, it really really gets me. And I'm not proud. One of the things that I'm most proud of at the University of Michigan is its role in developing that polio vaccine. It's one of the greatest gifts that our state has given to the world. And so they're gone now, but I think it's important to stand up for what you believe in, and this is one of the things that I deeply believe in. But anyway, the scariest part of what happened to me, I'm orange, my skin itches, and the worst part is no doctor could figure out what was wrong with me. I had these incredible doctors at Henry Ford and at Beaumont, where I was hospitalized for a couple days. Nobody could figure out what was wrong. I had one doctor tell me that I had end-stage liver cancer, which is kind of a scary thing to hear by yourself at 6:30 in the morning. I had another doctor asked me if I was on anabolic steroids. If you could see, I am not on anabolic steroids. Not getting ready for baseball season. I thought I was going to play third base for the Tigers. Guess that's not happening. But it was really scary. And I called the Cleveland Clinic, actually, at the advice of a friend who was going to drive down to Cleveland. And I was talking to a nurse there and telling her what had gone on with me. And she said to me, in the middle of the call, she just interrupted me and said, "Why are you talking to me? The best doctor in the world for what you have is 45 minutes down the road in Ann Arbor." And I thought to myself, here I am, the biggest Michigan fan in the world. I thought I knew everything about the university. And yet there was this doctor who in the 1980s became famous because he reformulated Tylenol to prevent these sorts of liver conditions from happening. It happened to me. And I went and saw this doctor. And this doctor saved my life. And I was proud to be around when my second daughter was born in August of last year. But it's not just about the incredible medical research. It's not just about the automotive research, the tech, life sciences, all the amazing things that happen at the University of Michigan. It's also about jobs. You know, the University of Michigan is the largest employer in our state now. The largest employer, larger than GM, larger than Ford. The university employs more people than either one of them. So when people ask me, why would you run for the Board of Regents? Well, think about this. We have a chance to vote for the board of directors of the largest employer in our state. So we have a choice. We have a choice between what the Republicans have put up, and I'll talk about that in a second. But do we want to have members of this board who support prevailing wage, who support good jobs, who support jobs that, I don't know if many of you know this, but there's been a big fight in Ann Arbor and in Dearborn and Flint about how much they pay the teaching assistants there. They've been paying them below poverty wages. Is this what we want to have? Do we want to have a progressive institution, or do we want to have what they're selling right now? And I want to tell you a little bit about the Republicans who are running again. So one's been serving for 24 years. The other one's been serving for 16 years. They're both corporate lobbyists. One's in Washington and one's in Lansing. The corporate lobbyist in Washington just took a job in the Trump administration. Ooh. The other one's up working for corporate interests in Lansing, and I think to myself, these aren't the people that I want on a board of directors of the largest employer in our state, and that's why they need to be replaced this year. And I want to just end by talking about two important things. The first one is accountability. When you run for Board of Education this time, you get asked a lot about. I guess they didn't get vaccinated for being quiet during my speech.
There's that door back there.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Not for me.
But anyway, when you're running for a state board of education right now, all people want to talk about is Michigan State. Everyone wants to say, how did this happen in East Lansing? How do we get through what's going on there? And the reality is, I don't have an answer for what's going on in East Lansing. The people who are running for the MSU board, I'm sure will come through here over the next few months. They'll talk about how they're going to face Michigan State. But I do know this, that there are 9 people in the state right now who think that the president and the board of trustees are doing a good job. and they're the president and the board of trustees. They have suffered from a total lack of accountability. So how do we get that accountability back? We get that accountability back in August when we pick these boards. So you have to ask yourself, when you come through for all of the boards, from Michigan, Michigan State, Wayne State, the State Board of Education, who's come to your meetings? Who's traveled around the state? Who do you know? Because we have to do a better job at picking these people. We can't just know about State Board of Ed, our Board of Education candidates on the date of convention. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's not democracy. And I want to end just by talking about perspective. One of the things that this always gets a laugh, and I think it's so important, but did you know that there is nobody on any of our boards of education in the state who has ever paid a student loan bill before? There's nobody on any of the boards, Michigan included, who graduated from college or high school this century. Not this decade, this century. We're really missing a perspective here, and I want to end just by telling you a quick story about something that happened to me last week, actually. I was up in Clarkston talking to the North Oakland Democrats. And I was talking about college affordability, all of these things that are so important to me at a time when tuition has skyrocketed over 600%. You'd have to work over 500 hours in the course of a year to go to school. And I told the story about my dad. My dad was a first-generation U of M alum. He worked 2 jobs. One during the school year, he worked 10 hours a week at a dining hall, bussing tables, and 40 hours a week during the summer at a camp up in Ortonville as the maintenance guy. He was able to pay for school like that because back then, in the mid-1970s, it was $600 for the first 2 years, and the second 2 years was $700. That paid for school. Think about that for a second. And now you'd have to work over 500 hours. It's incredible. But as I was walking out, the waitress at this restaurant came up to me and said, "Thank you." And I said, for what? She said, "Thanks for talking about what I'm going through. I just finished my second year at U of M Flint, and I got to take a year off to make the money to be able to go back next year. If I can go back. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Thank you." And I thought to myself as I was walking out, if someone is working 40 hours a week at a job and they can't afford to go to one of our amazing public universities, we failed. We are not succeeding. You know, that's the thing about this board that is so important. There are tons of people who are going to speak for the rich and the powerful, these corporate lobbyists who are on this board. There are tons of them. But who's going to stand up for that waitress and make sure that she's able to go to school? Who's going to stand up for us? That's why I'm running, because we need a new generation of leaders on this board, because we can't afford to have universities that are unattainable in our state. Thank you so much for having me. You can check out my website. It's mgoacker.com. mgoacker. Same thing on Facebook. I'll take any questions that you have if we have time.
About 2 months ago, there was a headline in the Free Press about the UM Board of Regents and their contributions and then funneling the money back into their corporation. I'd like your thoughts on that. I mean, you know, the more money I make, I guess the more I can give. But it was supposed to be a big scandal and it just went away. And secondly, the teaching and the research assistants, I understand, are unionizing with the UAW, so I would rather suspect you're supporting that.
Yes. Okay. So let me answer your first question first. So the Free Press did, for those who don't know, the Free Press did a big expose on some of the donations that big donors were giving to the university, that they weren't being funded back to the fair market value, and us, the taxpayer, was essentially paying for the difference. And they were only able to do this, they were only able to find out this info through incredible FOIAs. The university fought them tooth and nail to get all this information. I think that is wrong. One of my jobs in the Obama administration was working on Freedom of Information Act releases from the Department of Homeland Security. And one of the things that came down from President Obama was, if you're not sure it should be released, it should be released. And I think that's the way we have to be with everything. At U of M, they hide all the meetings behind the Open Meetings Act. It's not okay. A lot of the time, students don't find out that there's going to be a tuition increase until the meeting actually happens, because they're not allowed to be in the committee meetings. They've hid behind this law. It's not okay. And we can't be hiding where the endowment is being invested behind this screen. We can't. This is a public institution, and it belongs to all of us, and we have the right to know. And it may ruffle feathers on the Board of Regents if I'm elected, but that's okay. My responsibility is to the taxpayer and to the voters of the state of Michigan. So I will absolutely push for more transparency, not less. Because not only is it important for something in the financial realm when you're talking about the endowment, but it's also the #1 way to stop a Larry Nassar situation from happening is unbelievable transparency. That is a big problem that Penn State got into, that Michigan State, that Baylor, you name it, whatever you see, it's always the same thing. Universities hiding something. And the less you can hide, the less likely you are to have this situation happen. So I'm absolutely in favor of transparency. Your second question was about the
unionization of the student, the teaching assistants, the research assistants.
So this is a really important thing, and people don't know how badly treated a lot of these research assistants are. One of my favorite stories is when I was in law school, I was working for a think tank in Washington, and part of the job was to help convince what we call blue dog Democrat senators from the South to support the Affordable Care Act. Okay. So we went and gave this presentation to a Southern senator who's no longer in office, by the way, about why he should vote for the Affordable Care Act. And it said these 3 jobs are going to be the ones that are helped the most by the Affordable Care Act. And it listed 2, I can't even remember what the first 2 were, but the third one was university lecturer. It was the lowest paying job. And the senator, in the middle of the presentation, stopped my boss and said, I think you guys screwed up. And my boss said, Senator, what are you talking about? He said, well, you said that the university lecturer is the lowest paying job. That can't be right. Those people have PhDs and master's degrees. They're the lowest paying job. And we said, actually, Senator, they are. And this is a consistent thing from universities, and Michigan is an egregious offender of this, that they feel that they can underpay the people who make the university run. They've done this for years and years and years. The president's continuing to do it right now, and we have to stop it. I was proud to sign up for a shift if they had gone up on strike. They thankfully haven't yet. But it took that threat of closing the university right before finals to get even a $10,000 raise at a university that ran a $500 million surplus this year. Wow. This is what we're talking about here. So we have it, and this is what's scary about it. So thankfully, we have union representation there. Thankfully, the AFT has done an incredible job at Michigan. But I'll tell you, it's a 5-3 majority right now. And you know who's on that board is Ron Weiser, the chairman of the Republican Party. And Ron Weiser is no fan of working people. He gets, yep, that's exactly right. And if he gets a 4-4 or 5-3 majority on that board, you can kiss that goodbye. You kiss that $10,000 raise, which they haven't had in almost a decade, by the way, gone. It's all gone at that point. So that's why these boards are so important. We are on a razor's edge from losing all of those gains if Ron Weiser gets control of the board.
I have an issue with Michigan's admissions policy. You brought up an issue that your parent went to U of M, so you got priority to go in yourself. Someone who doesn't have that priority, no matter what their credentials are, doesn't get to go, especially if they're female. I've seen that over and over again.
So it's a great point, and I think first of all, you're absolutely right on one point. That at the time that I was admitted to university, absolutely got priority because of my parent. But I'll say this, that one of the big problems and why this is a constant issue with admissions is because a lot of the programs that they used to have that would make it possible for a student who was smart, who would work hard, who maybe didn't have the grades or the standardized test scores, they've eliminated all of them Because I talked about, as I told you before, I talked about I'm the second generation. My dad didn't get into Michigan at first. That he drove up to Ann Arbor on a Sunday morning with my grandfather, and they begged him to let him in. This is true, by the way. They drove up there, and this was before there was M14, so it took a while also. They drove up there, and he begged. He said, please, my son is so smart. I know he didn't really do that well on his SATs. He didn't really do that great in high school, but he will work so hard. And they had a summer start program, a big one. So they said, fine, you can come in May. If you do well over the summer, you can enroll in the fall. Since that time, the university has eliminated a lot of those programs. And that is a big part of why we're in the place we are. But we also don't make it easy to transfer between campuses. You know, not every student may be ready right away at 17 or 18 for Ann Arbor. That's okay, but they still should have an opportunity to earn a degree from the University of Michigan. So we need to do that, and we need to make it easier to transfer from other non-U of M universities as well. I see a follow-up question there.
My daughter had bigger, higher ACT, better grades, and more public service than either of her male cousins. They both got in a heartbeat. She did not. And I honestly thank God for that, because she ended up going to Kalamazoo and came out of school $250,000 in debt. When we had a met for 4 free years at U of M.
Yeah, it's first of all, I just thinking about the $250,000 is pretty incredible.
She's 42 and still owes $80,000.
It's unbelievable. It's
Yes.
unbelievable. It's not, and like you said, it is not acceptable that we live in a place.
What are you going to do to fix it?
Well, at the university level, the first thing that we can do comes from the endowment. The university has the ability to change this for the University of Michigan. When it comes to a school like Kalamazoo or Western, those things all come through. Kalamazoo because it's a private school, but Western, Central, Eastern, Oakland, they all come through the governor's office. They all come through the legislature. And I'll tell you this about that. This is a fact that, again, people in Michigan don't realize. When it comes to our public universities, Michigan, Michigan State, all the way down, we fund them worse than any other Big Ten school.
They keep cutting it too.
And they keep cutting it. And I'll tell you that if Michigan or Michigan State were at the bottom of the Big Ten when it came to football or basketball, you know there'd be a riot in this state. But we're okay when it comes to educational funding? I don't think so. And I think we need to do so much better for our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Acker. We really appreciate it. Wisam Naoum. I'll say your name correctly. I'm sorry. A little tricky. And he is running for the 30th District State Representative. Please give him a warm welcome. And thanks to all of you for your patience and fortitude, especially the candidates, but everybody that's here in the audience. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure they do too. You want to hold this or stand here? Just
I'll kind of do it.
Okay.
Let me know if I can project one up for you guys. Is that fine?
Yeah.
A little louder? Okay. So my name's Wisam. I'm running for state representative in the 30th district. That's the western half of Sterling Heights, all of Utica, and the southeast portion of Shelby Township. Now, as you guys can tell, I'm the son of immigrants. They fled the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s and came to the U.S. Fortunately for me, they laid their roots down here in Sterling Heights, and I had a great childhood. Had a lot of friends, got a good education, and after that, or during that process, I learned a lot of the values that I still have today in that neighborhood down on 14 and Ryan. And after that, I went to Wayne State University for college, and then went to Michigan for law school. Jordan said he had $110,000 in debt. I had $120,000 in debt. And what I ended up doing is, because of that, I took a job after law school in Chicago as a corporate finance lawyer, working at a big corporate law firm. And when I was there were a number of experiences that kind of, challenged me a bit and forced me to sort of evaluate what I was doing with my life. The first one was when I was a first-year associate at one of these firms. And when I was there, I'll only give you sort of a rundown of what I did. private equity firms buy companies and then they make them more efficient, sell them for more profit down the road. In that process, they'll usually chip in some of their own money, but the rest of it, they get financed from big banks. And so I represented big banks in those deals. And as a first year, you're learning the ropes, you're doing all the dirty work, you're doing all the diligence and so on and so forth, and you're just there to learn and listen. So I was doing that. I was on a phone call for about 3 hours, highly contested deal between private equity guys and bankers, and they're going at it. They really don't like each other, and it was pretty hostile. During that 3-hour conversation, a phrase comes up, cost savings and synergies, when they're talking about cash flow to sort of evaluate the health of the deal. And at that point, the conversation completely shifted. It went from extremely hostile to pretty chummy. And they started getting along, and the deal closed in the next 15 minutes. So I'm sitting there on my phone frantically trying to Google cost savings and synergies because I had no idea what it meant in this context. And the call ends. So, the partner looked at me and just said, "Get out of my office, I need you to go do work." And I kind of looked back and lingered, and he said, "Well, what do you want?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what this means. Cost savings and synergies, can you help me?" And he told me to close the door. And when a partner at a big law firm tells you to close the door, you're usually about to get chewed out or something, you're about to hear something really bad. So in that case, I close the door, and he looks at me, turns around and says, "There's some things about what we do that aren't really good." And I said, "Okay." And he looks at me and just says, "Cost savings and synergies means we're going to go in there and we're going to lay everyone off." I said, "Oh." And I had just done the diligence on this company, and so I knew what all these employees made. I knew what benefits they had, and so on and so forth. So I had to sit there and say, "That's what we're going to do. That's what you got excited about." And he just said, "Yeah," pretty matter-of-factly. And I grew up on 14 Orion, as I said. That was a working-class neighborhood. Those were the type of people that are impacted by this. And those guys are getting bonuses off that. So I said, okay, that's a problem. So flash forward a couple of years, I'm getting close to paying off my debt, and I'm at 5th year now. So I'm managing my own deals, I'm running the show, so to speak, at my level. And a deal comes across my desk, and they wanted to do an 8-week deal in 2 weeks. As an associate at a law firm, you're literally not allowed to say no, so I said, okay. I knew I wasn't going to sleep, and I didn't sleep, and we closed the deal. I go home that day after we closed the deal, and I grab a beer, and I turn on the TV. I wanted to watch some Michigan highlights or something like that. And I'm flipping through the channels, and as I'm going through the news channels, something catches my eye. It's Elizabeth Warren screaming at the top of her lungs about something. So I said, oh, what's she screaming about? So I stopped, and I started watching. And it turns out that at the prior firm I was at, I worked with a specific bank on a few deals. And now that bank was getting fined hundreds of millions of dollars for defrauding thousands of their customers. So I said, that's problematic. And then I thought to myself, well, someone's going to get in trouble. And then I laughed at myself because I knew no one was going to get in trouble. And I knew that no policy was going to get put in place to change the rules so that it didn't happen again. By the way, that bank is in trouble again, like right now. Yeah. And at that point, I made a decision. I wanted to come home, and I wanted to give back to my community. So I started the process of coming home. And I came home, and I started working with a small telecom company, and I handle their legal work right now, so that's what I started doing. But again, I wanted to get more involved. And so when I got back, something pretty big happened in our community, especially in Sterling Heights. Last summer, in June specifically, the Chaldean community was hit by the Trump administration with detainments for deportation. And I'm from that community. I grew up with a lot of these folks, and I had a problem with that. So a few friends and I got together that day after receiving a number of calls, and we started organizing. And we teamed up with the ACLU, and we just started working our asses off to make sure that none of those folks got deported. And to this day, I can stand in front of you and say that not one person, not one, has been involuntarily deported back to Iraq. And that process has been very difficult for us. It's been a whirlwind. As many of you know, our community joined the Trump train and sort of voted for him, and then to have that happen, it was a betrayal of sorts. So the community is going through a number of issues and dealing with that, but a lot of stories came out of that impacted all of us. And for me, one of the biggest stories that came out of that was one of the days that we were sort of inviting all the families in, trying to help them get lawyers, trying to get their situations settled. A woman walked through the door, and there's just something about her that caught my attention. And she didn't look good. She didn't look healthy. She had a buzz, her hair was buzzed, she had a tube sticking out of her, like right below her collarbone, and she looked very gaunt. And so we kind of welcomed her with open arms, and we were, a little worried about her, but we started talking to her, and she revealed that her uncle, who had drug addiction problems in the 70s and 80s, got in trouble with the law, and so on and so forth. At that time, totally fine now, but he was detained and was going to be deported. And she got really emotional about it, and they were all emotional, but there was something about her, so we kind of pressed her on why this was such a traumatic event for her. And she basically revealed that she had a disease which required bone marrow transplants at a moment's notice. And the problem for her was she only had one match, her uncle. And so that kind of took on a heightened sort of need for us. And it really showed me that government, the people we put in place, all those things really matter. So we fought for her, and now her uncle's out. And so she's healthy, she's happy, she's safe, he's here, everything is okay with them. But a number of the families are still there. But again, that sort of set the stage for me to make the decision of, hey, I said I was going to get more involved, I'm going to get more involved. So at that point, I decided to jump in this race. And when you jump into a race, you kind of look at yourself and say, hey, okay, I want to do this, but what am I really going to fight for? What do I want to change? So for me, a lot of what I grew up around, and a lot of what you guys, I'm assuming, are focused on is, your potholes, your paychecks, and your pensions, right? We're all focused on that. But when you want to do those things, you look back at the last 8 years and you realize nothing's really happened. In fact, it's gotten worse for all of us. So what's the issue? And there's two underlying issues that I've at least identified coming from the world that I came from. Big money. So for me, you see a lot of political corruption in Lansing, and you see a lot of corporate greed across Michigan. And because of those two things, you can't focus on those 3 Ps, potholes, paychecks, pensions. You can't really do anything about it because you have two sort of underlying issues that no one is addressing. So for me, what I want to do, what I want this campaign to be about, is to combat that sort of political corruption and combat that corporate greed. You've heard a couple examples today. You've got the Nestle water issue with the corporate greed stuff. Something that hasn't been discussed is you've got your opioid problem. Like let's say, for example, most of these pharmaceutical companies are the reason behind a lot of these addictions. And in the process of them developing the medication to stop the overdoses, like Naxil and naloxone, I'm not sure of the name, when this started to become an epidemic, they jacked those prices up to the point where that drug had 1,000% increase in its price. So they're profiting off the problem they created. So it's a number of things like this that you're seeing. And when you're talking about corporate greed, for instance, or political corruption, for instance, here's one easy example. There's a movement to, one company is pioneering this at least, but there's a movement to have direct sales from car companies to customers. The auto dealers in Michigan said, we don't like that, we like our little niche, so we're gonna stop that. So they hired a lobbyist, that lobbyist is married to a state legislator, that state legislator basically got a bill in that blocked direct sales to customers in Michigan. Again, it's anti-competition, the Republicans did it, but it doesn't make sense. But the reality here is you had a lobby buy off a state legislator through campaign donations. And then when we wanted to find out how it happened, we couldn't even see their emails because Michigan is one of 2 states where if you do FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, you can't see state legislators' emails, you can't see the governor's emails. That's a major problem. We don't know what happened for them to get that deal. And that case is still being litigated right now, by the way. So there are a number of issues that we can back, to be able to set the stage so that we can start coming up with innovative solutions to deal with the potholes, to deal with your pensions, to make sure that they're funded and so on and so forth. But we really got to start somewhere, and we got to start about dealing with those two things. And so that's what the campaign's about. Thank you.
And those two things, once again, are corruption and
Corporate greed. Yeah, those are the main platform issues. We've got a number of issues on the website that we sort of address and talk about. And that's at wisamformichigan.com, W-I-S-A-M as in Mary, F-O-R, Michigan, if you're interested in visiting and checking out those specific sort of policy details, and we have it.
I'd just like to add, and maybe this is just a comment more than a question, but you're the first candidate that has kind of gotten close to what is at the heart of why all these other very important issues that people bring up, and there's constituents that have their issues, and they're all valid issues. You can't solve these issues without the money to solve these issues. And when you live in a country where you just handed the rich $1.5 trillion, added it to the debt, now here's a real tough one. We spend $1 trillion a year keeping ourselves safe from this phony, what I call a phony war on terrorism. Mr. Cobb wanted to go into the bond market for $30 billion over 20 years. We spend $5 billion per month propping up one of the most corrupt governments on the planet, Afghanistan. A planet so bad, a country so corrupt, that if you read a book by Sarah Shays, she has an anecdote in there of a police colonel in Kandahar, or maybe it was Kabul, who sent his men out into a skirmish with the Taliban or other rebels in order to distract from a drug train that he had going on the other side of town. Okay? Now, don't take my word for it. Her name is Sarah Shays. She'll sit with professors on these committees and stuff. She's awesome. She has a book out. It's called Thieves of State. But until Americans, Michael Eric Dyson. You know who Michael Eric Dyson is? Cornell West. You know Michael Eric Dyson? Okay. He was talking about Dr. King's Three Evils speech the other day. And Dr. King's Three Evils speech was given years ago because of his assassination 50 years. Michael Eric Dyson was talking about Dr. King, and he brought up Dr. King's Three Evils speech, and the three evils, it's a long speech, but to make it short, the three evils are racism, militarism, and extreme materialism. Well, Michael Eric Dyson he's hands down one of the guys when he's talking, you just want to take notice, Well, when he brought that speech up, he said racism, militarism, and he hesitated a little bit, and this guy never hesitates. And instead of saying extreme materialism, he said poverty. Now, I got to send him a note on this, because poverty we're all against. But when you say extreme materialism, that kind of, well, wait a minute now, I like materialism. I just got me a new Charger. I'm going to swing a deal on that to cottage up north. Until people figure out that to bring justice to anything, we have to have the funds, and we have to be able to share, and we have to start directing where all these profits get spent. And now I'm tripping into areas that sound like the S one, socialism. But someone else brought up today that Denmark is full of happy people and they're taxed higher. So that's all. I said it would be more of a comment than a question. I'm glad you got the greed and the corruption.
Yeah, there are things that people no one talks about it. It's just kind of accepted, and everyone's just kind of like, politicians are corrupt. Well, why don't we do something about it?
We're the only ones.
I saw it firsthand. I really saw it firsthand. mean, to sit there and watch them get excited about laying people off, that's not good. That's what they're doing up there. And then that money is funneled into politics, by the way. Go ahead.
And yes, despite all of this, we still can't get fellow Democrats not to vote for Trump. All those union members that benefit the union members, they all voted for Trump. We can talk about corruption and corporations till the cows come home. You know, but our people don't vote for us. Well, I'm not for fellow Democrats don't vote for Democrats. So I'm not. I believe what you say. You know, but still, we can't be organized enough, and we don't have a platform to have people believe that we can do something better. They voted for Trump, for God's sake. A moral bankrupt. Yeah. You know, and every union member I know voted for him. And you're a Chaldean. Yeah. And I understand all Chaldeans voted for him. They're mass. And I'm Ukrainian American. And now you go down to the cultural center or the Polish center, they all voted for Trump. And I wish I could figure that out.
It's like a cult.
Yeah, it's because
It defies reason, or it's very cultish.
Yeah, the people are, what I've noticed is that people have been trending to vote more emotionally now, and they're voting their worldview as opposed to their interests. And I think that just means that us as a party need to get back to the basics. So you talked about unions. Why are unions valuable? We don't talk about that. There's been a 30 to 40 year sort of campaign in the media and everything you talk about, talking about how bad unions are, how bad they are for the economy, how bad they are for states. We don't combat that effectively. We don't tell our story properly. I don't hear about how or why unions are good on national TV. I think Democrats need to pick that mantle back up and talk about what you can do. Jordan talking about that story about how the Michigan lecturers are unionizing to protect themselves. That's a good thing. Or people talking about fast food workers like they're scum and that they don't deserve $15. They unionized. They fought back. Why don't we promote that more? That's something that we should be actively talking about, in addition to a number of our policy prerogatives that we don't do a good job of selling. It's something that I'm focused on talking about a lot, but I think we as a party need to do a much better job.
Republicans are taking the moral ground, but they're patriots.
Yeah.
They're the real patriots. They have radio shows called The Patriots.
What?
That's what you do to get people on board. It's how patriots.
That's-
And we can't get over that. Because why can't Democrats be patriots?
We're not doing a good job. So something that I'm focused on, if you look at my website, for instance, you're going to look at it and you're going to see that it's not hyper-partisan. It's something that I'm focused on because I don't want to be a part of that hyper-partisanship we're having right now. But for me, it's important to wrap progressive values in a way that people understand, that they know that is easy for them to accept. It's something that Democrats are typically not good. You mentioned the S word the other day, or a little bit earlier, and people are afraid of that word. But if you talk about those same values, those same things that we want, that everybody wants, in a way that is easy for them to understand and digest.
I've been searching for that for a long time.
There's a way. There's a way. You can wordsmith all of that, but as long as the values are there and you connect with those folks on providing health care for your kids,
Why can't that be
providing them for an and then wrap ourselves in the flag. Why don't we wrap ourselves in the flag?
Right. I mean,
It's simple stuff. We just have to do it. We have to execute.
For
So,
example, Medicare for all. That actually benefits corporations because they don't have to offer the insurance to their workers.
so the company that I work at, the biggest burden is health care for our guys. So, good point.
Exactly, so let the society worry about that. I could start a business and hire whoever I want. And there's a good thing Medicare. And yet that doesn't, but the average Republican guy out there, he says that's communism. That's, you know.
We have a question at the back of the room.
You know, when you're talking about our values, Democrats, we don't get it out there. Well, Republicans are eating up the airwaves. I mean, they're television. Trump, every single minute of the day, he's on next issue, okay, I want to hear from Michigan, but, I mean, how do we do that? I mean, when I hear people saying, we don't stand for anything, or we're not letting people know we stand for, how do we do that? We don't have the kind of money the Koch brothers have, because the Koch brothers are buying up everything. I mean, they can do anything they want. So how do you do that? I mean, we listen to a station, she usually listens to at 910, and that 910 station is because it used to be mostly Democrats on there, and it was really great the things that they were saying. And now the people in there, a lot of them are from Detroit and everything, they're talking about how bad the Democrats are. So what do we do? I mean, like, why can't some of these people over here that are running for office go on 910 and talk to those people on 910 then? Because, I mean, the things that they are saying, I mean, I'm driving along and I practically have to pull over. So how do you combat that? I mean, what can we do? Because we don't have the same one.
By saying the Republicans did this to me. I don't feel bad being partisan, because I think somebody needs to say, hey, that guy did that to you, Flint. That guy did that. That guy was right here.
Didn't care if you lived or died.
I think it can't be said enough. And I think we should be partisan, and we should keep saying what they did to these people. And instead of sitting back and being light and being nice and thinking that people are just going to realize that the Republicans did this stuff to them. They did do it to them. Somehow they're convincing them to vote against their own best interests. But somebody has to keep saying it to them to remind them who did what.
I just don't know. They're eating up the airwaves and stuff like that. I don't know how we're going to get out. Because we're the same people with the same beliefs. We don't believe in racism. We believe in people like Ellen. We want what's good for the people. We want our public schools to thrive. We want all that. Nobody's saying that we don't want it, but we can't get it out because the airways are being eaten up by the Republicans. And the lies, the constant lies on there, I just don't. And I do think that these people, that station, that radio station, it's really hitting a lot of people in Detroit. So I do think that they should, get on there. Those Democrats should get on that station and tell the people exactly what they believe in.
They've done
the same
how
stuff.
they voted on issues.
Sorry?
No, you're fine.
Is that AM or FM or what is it?
9:10
9:10 AM. So it's Republican station, is that what you're saying?
No, it's not.
It's not? Ah.
They call
Yeah, the
it-
Democrats are not good at using the bully pulpit, that's for sure. Even Barack Obama did not use the bully pulpit enough. I don't know if he was too young, didn't think about it. I'm about 10 years older than him, and I was just screaming all the time, get on the bully pulpit, speak up, talk about it. But he was busy doing a lot of things, but not really talking about it. So people have a bad impression of him. Not everybody, of course, but some people have a bad impression. Another little announcement by Jeffrey Varga, I think, would like to announce. And what about Miss Lodavisi? Is she still here, or has she gone? She might have gone. People that are running for office. Here, do you want the microphone?
No, I'm good. Can everybody hear me? My name is Jeffrey Varga. I'm running for Macomb County Clerk and Register of Deeds. I was raised right on 23 in Van Dyke. In 2008, I graduated Utica High School. 2009, I enlisted in the U.S. Army. I deployed to Afghanistan as a combat soldier, came back, and now I'm going to Wayne State University on the GI Bill. I want to get into Macomb County Clerk's office because it operates as a nonpartisan office. And in order to make something like that operate well, you have to be efficient and be able to manage a bunch of different people. Something that Karen Springer was sorely lacking. So I think I can bring that to the Macomb County Clerk's office. And yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Jeffrey Varga 1 and Facebook at Varga for Macomb County Clerk.
And that's Jeffrey with a G, G-E-O-F-F-R-E-Y, V-A-R-G-A.
Like the Toys R Us giraffe.
Is there anybody else that would like to announce their candidacy? Oh, that would be me. I'm running for Macomb County Commissioner for the District 4, that's the southern half of Sterling Heights, so wish me luck.